Let's get to our member-specific segment, Hidden Gems 2020. Tell us what we're going to be doing here, Ben.
Well, Fields of ARLE to me is sort of like a hidden gem because even though it is well received and it's actually ranked very high on BGG, like number in the low 50s, I still feel like it's a game that a lot of people don't know about. And it's been overshadowed by things like Agricola and Feast for Odin. And I noticed that there were not a lot of podcast reviews for it. So that's another reason why I wanted to review it, is because it's a good two-player game. I think a low player count is important in pandemic times. And also, like, I wanted to, like, have a nice, like, chunky discussion about it because I feel like it's a little underserved, which got me thinking about what are some other games that are like hidden gems that are maybe don't have the sort of love that they should be getting, or have been forgotten about, or maybe you've heard of them but you just sort of like maybe just dismiss them. And I kind of want to be like, hey, you should be paying attention to this game because I've really enjoyed it. So we're talking hidden gems.
Exactly. And I'm going to try and come up with new hidden gems because I think I bring up hidden gems not too unoften, and it's one of my favorite things in the world. Candace Harris of Board Game Geek is amazing, and she will sometimes shoot me an email or a text and just say, "Hey, you told me, you were raving about Santiago and how no one played it. I just played it and we had the best time. I absolutely love this game." And when that happens, that's probably my favorite experience as a podcaster, is when somebody plays a little known game or a game that doesn't, people don't think of anymore, and they just have this spark of absolute joy that they found something magical and they found something amazing. That's what we're trying to create here. We're gonna, let's get into it. What's your first hidden gem that you want to talk about, Ben?
The first hidden gem, aside from the Deluvia project, since we already reviewed that's a major hidden gem, so people should go revisit that review. But this one's called Iki, IKI, and it is like, I think it's my most hidden gemiest hidden gem. It is just an absolutely wonderful game. Wonderful game. It came out about 5 years ago or so, maybe 6 years ago. And it takes place in Edo era Japan. And the game is like a giant rondel. You're basically in a marketplace and you're visiting stalls in the marketplace. When you visit the stalls, you get certain items, etc. But what's cool is that you get to hire people and put them into the various stalls. And when people visit your merchant, then that merchant gains experience. And when they gain experience, they start to offer you better income. At certain points of the game, like every few turns, there's like the end of the round, you get income from your merchants. Mm-hmm. And so the more people visit your merchant, the better your income is going to be. And then at a certain point, they gain so much experience that they actually retire and they just join your tableau. And so you have the fun of a rondel, and then you also have the fun of this game of like you need like what employees do you put out? You want to put someone out there that's going to be attractive to other people to come visit, but then you also are like, but maybe I also want to put an employee that's going to be attractive for me to visit, and then where do I put it? Because all the different stalls are associated with different actions. It's a wonderful, wonderful game. Totally like passed over by the board game community, but Rahdo did a run through of it, which will give you a good sense. I highly encourage people to go look at the run through, and then if it looks good to you, try to track down a copy. It's like one of my most beloved games.
I have never played it. Can't wait. Looking forward to that.
I would love it. There's no online implementation either, and so that really bums me out.
Speaking of rondels, my first choice is 2009's Shipyard. Vladimir Suhi.
So good.
It is such a good game. Now, games disappear for a variety of reasons. This one disappeared because right when it came out, a lot of people played it. A lot of people were into it. And then just that one thread comes on Board Game Geek where they say the bonus tiles, the tiles that you choose for the end of the game, are imbalanced. The game is broken. And
it's ridiculous.
That's all it takes is just that. And the game will die and disappear. And I bring it up occasionally as being one of my favorite games. And crickets, right? People don't know it. People have seen it, but they've never played it. It is an amazing game. There are 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's like 6 rondels in the game. The game is just all these different sections that each have their own rondel. One rondel is getting parts for the ship. One is getting crew for the ship. One is getting upgrades and technologies that are going to let you advance and design it better. One rondel is the action selection rondel, where you're choosing which of the other rondels you're going to you're going to activate. And what you end up doing is you end up getting pieces, really nice pieces of a ship, and you're building it on your own personal player board, which is your shipyard. So I get the bow of the ship, I get the stern of the ship, and then I'm filling in the middle spaces. The middle spaces have different things. Like they have an emplacement where I can put a cargo crane, or where I could put a gun, right? Where I could put a ship's gun, or where I could put sails, where I could put sail rigging, right? Or it has a cabin where I could put passengers on that, and I can then get passengers. Like I could get more crewmen, or I could get businessmen, or I could get soldiers on that ship. And basically you can create situations where you are specializing your ships. There are all sorts of different ways to play the game. I've seen people win making a ton of really tiny ships. I've seen people win making just the one mega ship. I've seen people win by just making military ships and whaling on that and the various points you can get from that. Other people doing mercantile ships.
So good.
It's such a good game, right? It's crazy.
It's so good.
And
you get to build a ship.
Yeah.
You get to build ships, and you set them, and then you send them down a canal. That's the other thing. You send them down a canal. It's so. I agree. It's totally forgotten about. And it deserves lots more love.
And Vladimir Suhi has become an amazing designer, and this is one of his early classics, really, really classic. I highly recommend that you go out and you try Shipyard. Look on the Geek, find a way to tweak the tiles. I think there's really one tile in that is that creates a imbalance, and you could even just pull it out of the game because you don't need it.
It's such a minor thing.
Agreed.
That the tile issue, and there are some fixes. It's like don't worry about that. I have one. This game came out about 2 years ago or so, maybe 3, called Lowlands, and this is like a perfect companion piece to Fields of Arle. Paul.
Floods.
What'd you say?
Floods.
Yeah, I mean it's the same thing. It's sheep farming. There's dikes. But this game is basically just about sheep farming and dikes. And, Paul, after one of our games of Fields of Arle this week, we were talking about interaction, et cetera, and how you like to play games. And I was like, you have to play Lowlands. And the reason why is because this game it's to the untrained eye, it just looks like, a standard farming Euro. Oh, you're growing sheep, you're mating sheep. And but what the game is really about is that you are trying to make the most amazing sheep farm. You build your fences and build pastures and this and that. And you get little buildings to help facilitate the breeding of sheep. And this is like a major sheep game. Like your sheep, it's like sheep out of control. It's like that Star Trek episode with the little furry things,
Tribbles.
Yes, thank you. Trouble with Tribbles, whatever it's called. So there's you want to make the most magnificent sheep farm, and whoever makes the best sheep farm at the end of the game is going to get a ton of points. But the problem is you're doing this all in the Netherlands, and you're doing it right by the water. And if you don't build a good dike, then the water's just going to flood it and kill all your sheep, and then your amazing sheep farm is worth nothing. And so you can basically, it comes down to like, am I going to use my resources to build my own private sheep farm, or am I going to use my precious resources to contribute to the communal dike and the dike that will protect us all? And the thing is, if you contribute a lot to the dike, you're going to get a lot of basically dike points, because the town will, theoretically appreciate.
Thank you and pay you.
Yeah, thank you for building that dike. But the problem is, if you make this wonderful dike, then the sheep are all protected, and then whoever then your contributions get forgotten, because whoever has the most sheep is going to, like, this wonderful sheep farmers, and get all the points. But if you focus all on your sheep and you don't contribute to the dike, then your sheep are going to get washed away, And then whoever did contribute whatever they could to the dike will be remembered as this like martyr who attempted to save the town. So it's this has this amazing, super interactive thing right in the middle of the game where it's like trying to gauge between destroying everyone else's. Like, I want to help. I want to build that dike, but not build it very well. So that way I get all these dike points, but then that floods everyone else. And then everyone's like, well, I need to work on my sheep farm to make it amazing, but I need to save my sheep farm, so I've got to contribute to the dike. But then if I contribute to the dike, then I might be helping so-and-so. It's so good. And it got amazing reviews, and just the world passed it over.
It sounds like CO2 with sheep.
Sort of, but I mean, this is such a Paul game, and my only thing is that apparently it's not as good at lower player counts. I've only played it at 4 players, and I want to try it at 2 and 3 because it still could be really fun. But at 4 players, it is so good.
Why would you want to play it at lower player counts if it's better at higher?
No, well, that's the thing. But the thing is that sometimes people get obsessed with player count, and they're like, well, you can only play it at 4 player because that's when it's best. And sometimes a game may be best at 4 players, but it still can be really fun at 2. You know, just because it's best at 4 doesn't mean it's like unplayable at 2. So if it's playable at 2, then hey, why not?
My next one is a game that Paul and I have played many, many times. It is not a completely hidden gem because it's ranked 417 on the Geek, but I have a confession. When I was putting together a list of possible hidden gems that I would talk about, one designer came over and over and over again, and it's Reiner Kenitzia. Everybody knows who he is, but he had this span from 95 to around 2002 where he churned out amazing game after amazing game. And when you go back and play them, they're not like, when you go back and play some games from 2012, you're like, oh, I see what this is. This is good, but this game that came out 4 years later basically took a lot of the same stuff from it, and it's better now. That's the better version of this, right? That game fired the other game. Reiner Kenitzia games don't get fired. There is something. They are unique and different and kind of amazing. The one I'm picking is my favorite Kenitzia game of them all, which is 2000's Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal has a mechanic in it that I have never seen in another game that is totally unique, absolutely fascinating, and crazy good. What it is you are people competing for the favor of the Maharaja, who is going to move through 13 different areas of India. And in each region, we are fighting for 5 different rewards, I believe. 5 or 6 different rewards. No, it's 6. It's 6 different rewards. There is, there are 4 different advisors who you can get the attention of. There is the Grand Vizier. There's the what's the one with the circle? Paul, do you remember what that one's called?
I'm trying to think. No, I do not.
Anyway, and then there is a mercantile. Elephants get the commerce of that region, and you have a hand of cards. Everybody has a hand of cards. These cards are different colors, which are the suits. Once you start playing one suit, you have to continue to play that suit, and they have symbols. They have 1 to 2 symbols in the upper right. And those symbols correlate to the different rewards that you can gain. If I am the first player in this round and I play something that has a princess and a general on it, the next player then goes and plays something that has 2 elephants on it, for instance, right? And so on and so forth. When it comes back to me, if nobody played a princess or nobody played a general, I can then bow out. I lose only that 1 card, and I gain the reward that no one else played, right? Because I have 1 general, no one else has a general. I win generals, I can retire now. But what if I don't want to retire now? What if I have a really good hand of cards now, and I'm not content just taking 1 reward out of 6? I play 2 of this or that or the other thing, and it becomes this thing where some people are going to do very well by getting out early, like taking the small victory and getting out early, because they get certain advantages. They get to put down a temple, a palace in that region first, and some of those spaces are better than other spaces. Some of them have rewards on them. Second thing is they get the first choice of the 2 cards that they get to draw to replenish their hand, and sometimes that's a big decision because they can put together long strings of the same color, or they can get they can monopolize one symbol, right? Which could be very important because then you're the only one who can get that reward. It's an amazing game because there's a press your luck and a bluffing aspect, right, Paul? Wouldn't you say that there's a lot of bluffing in the game where you're trying to get people to go out and you're trying to make people think that I could play these cards all day when you're totally out.
I will say that table image does contribute to your success. It is one of those things where, in the end, I guess the reason why I like this game is because you have to also consider the person and what they are, not just the cards, but like the person as far as what they're willing to go and what their pain threshold is. And that's always it's always good to see for me. Like, I'm a person who really likes pressure to reveal character. So I think that's what makes the game kind of unique for me.
Yeah, it's a wonderful game. Very competitive, very emotional. You are there's a lot at stake in some of these hands. You lose the game by overplaying your hand and having to give up 4 cards and get no rewards for it. That is a crushing defeat, and there is a lot of that can happen in this game. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and it was
design.
just re-released as like revamped, not revamped, but just like made pretty and stuff, right?
Yes,
so,
exactly right. And didn't, I don't think made the splash that I wish that I wish that it had. So Taj Mahal, please check it out. It's incredible.
I'm definitely going to check that out now. My next one is one that I think lots of people have probably seen in the bargain bins of America and on sale on Amazon for as low as $10 to $15. It is a sweet, ugly little game, and ugly as in like I can't stand the way it looks. Like the font is like Chicago font, and it's like green and browns. It's really a really ugly game. I'm gonna say it.
We sent out that email that we should stop font shaming. Please don't font shame.
I'm doing a lot of font shaming today.
You really are.
Just like I drank a lot of coffee, and I'm like, you know what? Today I'm taking down all the fonts. This is it. But it's an ugly little game, and I think it was the victim of.
Can I stop for 1 second? I need to say one more thing on the fonts. Do you realize that the first American printing, the 3rd edition of D. Mocker, the rule book was printed in Comic Sans?
Yes. Actually, I think I maybe you told me that, or maybe I saw it when I looked it up online.
The greatest font crime of all time.
I don't even know how to process that. I don't even know.
I mean, not only is it the worst font in the world, but it's except for dyslexics. Actually, it's a good font for dyslexics. Interesting fact. But not only is it one of the worst fonts in the world, but when you're trying to match a font to a game, Comic Sans and D. Mocker, I'm like, what?
Comic Sans is like what you type it's like when you are announcing a bake sale and you're not even announcing it well, but you're like, Comic Sans, like, hey everyone, there's a bake sale down the hallway.
When I'm inviting 5-year-olds to a 5-year-old's birthday party.
Font shaming. This font shaming is just not, I don't feel safe. Like,
Sorry.
Listen,
Continue, Ben.
There's a
like my will is in Comic Sans.
I have to say, as long as you know what I have to say, I really don't like Zap Chancery. Zap Chancery bothers me because I feel like it's trying to be fancy, but it's like not fancy at all.
What about the Dingbats? Are you a fan of the Dingbats?
Zap Dingbats is a whole other. I mean, I don't even understand why we have that. You literally can't read it. It's hieroglyphics.
All right, what's your next game?
For no culture.
That's been Font Talk with Tom, Ben, and Paul. Join us next week. Go ahead. What's your next game?
So this ugly little game is called City Hall, and it was released by TMG. Yeah. Have you played it? Have you played City Hall?
No, but I remembered looking at it and saying, "What's that font?"
What? Why is there such an overuse of the Chicago font?
And look at that green.
Yeah, it really is like very unpleasant. So the game came out. You know what? Tom Vassell reviewed it, and he did not like it. And Tom Vassell's pretty influential. When if he says he doesn't like a game, and it's like a sort of a new game, and it's especially about city building or whatever, it's going to have an uphill battle. And no one reviewed this game. No one really gave it a shot. And but I love city building, and I was intrigued by this game, and so it was available for really cheap. And I had read a really strong review of it online. I think it was at like islaythedragon.com, and I was like, you know what, I'm interested in this. Super cheap. I bought it. I played it and had a great time. I could not believe how much fun it was. It was so wonderful. It was the concept is that you're basically developing New York City. Seems like turn of the century-ish or whatever. It's sort of hard to tell. The art is very much like the teens, 20s, whatever. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing is that we're on a path to we're all running for election theoretically, and it's all the actions take place in City Hall. And anytime you want to do an action, like you put your meeple down to do an action, it's like worker placement, mm-hmm. but you can't just do that action. Like when you declare this is the action I want to do, then there's like an auction, and there's two currencies, money and influence. And so if I say, oh, I want to do this action where I'm going to like zone some land, then we go around the table and basically, Tom, you would say, okay, I would pay 2 influence to do that. And then Paul, you'd say, I would pay 3 influence. And then I have to decide, am I going to take Paul's higher bid of 3 influence, or am I going to pay 3 influence to do that action that I want to do? And so there's this really interesting influence economy going on, which is actually very, very thematic. And then the game itself is pretty interesting of building the city out. And I don't want to get too far into it, also because I haven't played it in forever. But I thought it was a really, really fun game that just kind of got totally lost and forgotten about, and it's not very pretty. And so I think people are just like, huh?
It sounds like a no-brainer at a low price.
What did you say?
It sounds like a no-brainer at a low price point, right?
I think if you can actually find it for $10,
yeah.
Get it. And I really wish there were an online implement. I keep on saying this, but I do wish there were an online implementation of it, because I would love to play it some more. There are some people who've complained about some issues with the game in terms of not imbalance, but like here's a strategy that you really have to pay attention to, and if you don't pay attention to it, someone's going to win. It's one of those situations. Mm-hmm. But God, I really like it, and I think if you see it in a bargain bin or whatever, or online for cheap, pick it up and give it a try. I really, really enjoyed it a lot.
Cool. My next one is 2016's game Dokmus, Dokmus. This is how, when Candace Harris first came to my game night, she goes into the back room where all the games are, right? And I love that. I love getting to know a person by having them look at the wall of games and see what they pick out. And she was just amazing. She was just like, oh, great Zimbabwe. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, and like everything she picked out was just the connoisseurs. It's like she's going through a wine cellar and picking out, not the wine that everybody knows is great, but the wine that very few people know is amazing, but is actually one of the best wines in the world. That's the way she went through my collection. And she pointed at Dokmus and she said, Dokmus, oh my God, I love that game. I've never met anybody else that loves that game. Well, when Trey, Maddie, and I went to Essen, we played this game with the designers. It just came out that year at Essen. It is an abstract strategy game that has a Wiz War mechanic. Now, I'm talking original Wiz War. You are these magicians, and you're playing cards that have these amazing powers that are blasting people through walls and knocking down things and all that sort of stuff. But it also had these really great cards occasionally that would change the map. It would twist the map. It would relocate a sector of the map to a different place because they were, 9 squares stuck together, and you can move a square to a different place. Dokmus is essentially like that. What we do is we have a hand of settlements, essentially, and what you're going to do is at the beginning of the game, you put down 1 settlement, and then when it's your next turn, you're going to put a maximum of 3 settlements on the board, and they have to be orthogonally adjacent to a previous settlement. And the goal of the game is to get the most points that you can. And you get points by building settlements next to the small temples, the large temples, next to the ruins. You get extra points if you are in a lot of different sectors. The more sectors you have a settlement in, the more points you get. And so the trick to the game is that you are drafting at the beginning of the round, right before you start placing things, you're drafting one of the gods. There are 5 gods in the game, and each one has a different special power. One of them allows you to move a guy without getting a penalty. Like there are some places that you need to lose a guy when you enter the forest, right? So one of your settlements goes out of the game in order to move from a clearing to a settlement. Another one is when you're crossing a lake, you need to sacrifice a guy for that. This one says you don't have to sacrifice. Another one is you can rotate a sector any way you want. So all of a sudden I go from having a guy on the edge of the board to a guy that is right next to another sector that I was previously miles away from and would take forever to get to. Another one is shift a sector. So there are 9, it's a 9 sector grid, but there's only 8 sectors. At the beginning of the game, the center sector is empty, so you can slide a sector into that space, like those old puzzles that you would get on a keychain where you slide things around and you try to make the picture show up. I don't know if you even know what I'm talking about. Anyway,
yes, I got you, Tom.
You got me? Good, thank you.
I got it. I got it too, guys.
Yeah, so it's essentially an abstract strategy game with just enough strategy, and the map is, it's different terrains and all sorts of stuff like that, so it kind of makes sense. But a surprisingly deep and really interesting multiplayer strategy game that I found kind of fascinating. It's kind of a throwback. It's kind of like those games that Reiner Kenitzia would design or whatever in the early 2000s that were really good. Have either of you played this?
I've seen pictures,
I have
but
not.
I've never played it.
I have not. No.
It looks interesting, though.
Highly recommend it. It's very, very interesting. I love it.
I'll check that out. My next one is called Castell. Came out about 2 years ago, and from Renegade Games, and it's basically a game about the. I think I've actually talked about it on the podcast before. The Catalonian tradition of human towers.
Oh, that's right. Yes. That's the one where everyone's trying to get up as high as they can. Yes.
Yeah. So I have talked about it before. It's really good. It's really good, and it's heavy, and in a way that would surprise you. It's pretty simple, but like how you plan out your actions and how you build your human pyramids. It's you have to plan a lot, and you have to do a lot of thinking. I think you guys would both really enjoy it a lot. I think especially Tom, you would really enjoy it. Paul, there may not be enough of that sort of like anarchy ability for you.
Chance to be an a-hole? Is that what you're saying?
But there are some anarchist abilities, qualities to it, but not like Lowlands is like the Paul game. Like that game is like so Paul, it hurts. It's so Paul. But Castell though is really fun.
So Tom.
It's so Tom. I would love to play. I mean, I want to play all these games with you guys, but Castell has a really good mod on TTS, so it's one that you can play. Lowlands is also on TTS. Have not played it there yet, but Castell, great, really, really great game. That's both all about planning, but also there's a lot of. It's sort of like it's not really tile laying, but you're building your human pyramid out of these tiles, and there is a tactile visual element that is really, 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 really fun and strategic and thinky and puzzly. So super, super high recommendation. It just didn't it's barely made a blip. I don't know why. I mean, it was 2 years ago. It's a beautiful looking game, super fun, interesting, innovative stuff you haven't seen before. And for some reason, it just got lost. And so I'm telling people to go check that out.
Speaking of a game that was just a few years ago and got completely lost, I'm going to talk about ReWorld. ReWorld is ranked 3,308, which is a crime against nature. This is a Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling game. I mean, these are the guys that did To Call. I mean, this is the same people that did games like El Grande. I mean, amazing, amazing designers. Really incredible. It was the year we went to Essen once again, and we got to play this game, and it was our surprise hit of the entire fair. We did not expect to come out loving that one more than anything else. But we really did. It was a really good game. I'm not sure it's better than some of the other titles that we played there, but it was the one that surprised us the most because we had heard nothing about it. In ReWorld, we're going to be attempting to terraform a newly discovered planet. And the game has two completely distinctive halves and phases. The first half, what we're doing is there's a big big spaceship, right? And there are bays in that spaceship that have different equipment, right? There are shuttles that are able to fly different parts. There are terraformers, which you're going to need to land and terraform a place. There are satellites, which give bonuses in various places. There are material vessels, which provide the goods and things that you're going to need to build a world. And all of these have letter designations saying the location that they are suited for on the world that you're going to build. And you are playing a very, very cutthroat game where you are selecting a card from your hand, or you're selecting one of these elements, and when you do, it makes the other elements around it harder, more expensive to get. It's a very interesting design. But when you get these elements are going onto your ship, and they're going in a specific order, which is interesting because in the second half of the game, you're then taking the elements that you got in that first half of the game. That's the equipping phase, right? And now you have to put these elements down on the planet. And it creates a really, really interesting puzzle because the first things that you put on your ship are often some of the last things that come off of your ship. And the order in which you have to put things down on the planet matters tremendously. There is a real competition in a lot of different ways. Really good scoring, really interesting. It's a very different game than any other game that I've played. It's one of these games where you're trying to get the best stuff, but it's not just about getting the best stuff. It's about figuring out the order in which you're placing these things on your ship in order to be able to offload it well and dominate on the terraforming, planet conquering part of the phase. Very, very interesting game. I highly recommend that you check it out if you get an opportunity.
Awesome.
And let's have this be our last one, if that's okay with you, Ben.
Okay.
5?
Okay, I'll do. Okay, I'm gonna change this one up.
No,
then.
fine. We'll do 6.
No, it's fine. I mean, I listen. I can just keep going.
We can make this a 4-hour podcast, no problem.
I'm gonna give like my blurb about this next one, and then I have another sort of like I'll just do like a bullet points like for my because I've got a bunch that I just want to have their names uttered in the world, and then people can look into them. This one. Oh gosh, I've got 2 here to choose from. Which is the one that I want to highlight the most? I'm going to highlight this one.
What did you pay the most for?
That's a good. Well, I'm going to highlight this one, which I did pay the most for this one, and it's totally different than everything we've discussed. And if I think it's a hidden gem, and the reason why I say I think it is, it's a game called Bellarati that hasn't actually even really come out here stateside. So that's why I'm like, is it a hidden gem if it hasn't really come out here? It's going to be, I believe it's going to be released here under a different name. I forget what the new name is, but you can just look up Bellarati and you'll probably see the implemented by something on Board Game Geek. But it's actually sort of like a party game. And it's of that style of like Mysterium, of like association and what do we all associate what with what. But this is actually my favorite version of it. It's almost like a streamlined version of Mysterium. If you want to see how it plays, Game Night, which Candace, let's just keep talking about Candace because she's wonderful. I don't think she was on this episode, but she appears often on Board Game Geek's Game Night. They actually did an episode about Bellarati, and the theme is sort of wacky. It's basically around the table, some of us are owls and some of us are cats, and the owls are curators at a museum and the cats are artists, or maybe it's the other way around. It's hard to tell sometimes with these very realistic experiences. But the museum wants to put on an exhibition, and you pull 2 cards from the top of the deck, and you say, "This is what we want our exhibition to be. This is the theme of the exhibition," and all the cards on the deck are just images of objects. And just it's not abstract. It's not like anything crazy. It's like an umbrella or a shoe or a flower, very, very simple. And so maybe the theme is like an umbrella and a shoe. And then we all the quote unquote artists have like a hand of cards. And the curators, who actually I think are cats, the curators have to say, we would like 6 paintings, for this exhibition. And so then the group as a whole has to take cards from their hand and submit them to the museum, but no one gets to see what everyone else is submitting. And but the group discusses like, I have a good one. I have one that would really match this. This would really match this theme, etc. So the group submits their cards, and then the curator cats pull 4 cards from the top of the deck and put them into this group, and they shuffle it all and present them all. And now the curators have to decide which cards came from the players and which cards came from the deck.
Right.
And the whole idea is that like if there was an umbrella, maybe someone put a card out that was like boots, because it's like maybe boots are sort of like you wear boots because it's wet or something like that. And it's just like a cleaner, easier version of Mysterium. It is so fun, and everyone I've played it with has just adored it. This is not a heavy game. This is the opposite end. So fun.
I think Mysterium's a great game, but I would like it with a little less to do, right? I think that's fantastic.
Exactly. Oh, it's fussy. So check it out when it comes out in stateside. Like, be sure to seek it out, and I'll try to find the proper name of what it's going to be. But I think the new version is going to be like a yard sale instead, which I think is not nearly as fun as a museum with artists.
No, definitely not. And my final one is The Bloody Inn. The Bloody Inn came out in 2015, and listen, probably the theme is what killed it, because listen, it's not tremendously unpopular.
That's part of it.
759.
That's right.
All right.
Is that what killed it?
In 1831, in a little French village called Ardèche, one of the very first serial killer cases came out. It turns out that there were a bunch of rural farmers that were dirt poor and, not doing so well. And listen, they weren't going to be able to guillotine the rich for another 50 years, so they had to make their own fun. So what they did is they opened an inn. So travelers passing through would come to their inn, and then they would get them drunk and rob them blind. Matter of fact, I think Les Miserables has the innkeeper and his wife, why they're such the villains and so dastardly, I believe, comes in part from this story. So they get them drunk, they rob them blind, and if these people ever find out that they were robbed, they murder them. They murder them and bury them, out in the fields where they're farmers and stuff like that, until eventually the gendarme found out and and arrested all these people, and it was a huge scandal in the area. So we are all playing these disreputable innkeepers. We have a hand of cards. The interesting thing about the game is that the hand of cards that you have can be played in a variety of ways. You can play them face up in front of you, in which case you are making them your conspirators and they're part of your crew and working for you, in which case their special abilities come to play. You can play them in a room in the inn, in which case they are the people in the inn that you are then going to rob. You can murder them. You can murder the people that are in these places, but then you have to worry about the coppers, right? The coppers are going to be in and around. So when you murder somebody, you better have a plan for dealing with the body. It is the interesting thing about the game is that it is an engine that eats itself. When you are playing the game properly, you are burning through your cards, creating an engine, and then suddenly you don't have any cards. Your engine can kind of die on you. So it is very, very different than almost every other card game that I've ever played. It plays in about an hour maximum. It's a pretty good. I would call it a long filler, and just so wonderfully macabre and delightful, right? Wouldn't you say, Ben?
Oh, it's so good. The art is wonderful. It's so evocative, and it feels like you're in one of these like Tim Burton movies as like this this macabre is the perfect name for it. I wish there were more macabre games because it really has that vibe. You start getting into a hole, like you kill someone and then the cop comes and you're like, uh-oh, if the cop finds that I've killed someone, I'm gonna be in trouble. So you kill the cop, and now you've got like a dead cop there, and you got a dead this person, and you got to like. You not only do you have like the dead bodies, but you have to actually like stow the dead bodies away. So you have to build like a shack or something, an annex to stow the dead bodies. And it's one of the it's like one of these typical movies, right? Where like one stupid crime then snowballs and snowballs and snowballs and snowballs, and you definitely get that vibe. I actually almost wish the game had even more pressure because sometimes it feels like you start to get in the hole a little bit, and I kind of wish the game really ratcheted up that pressure a lot, you know. And I have the expansion, but I haven't played with it. It's called the Carnies, and because you know what, one of my issues with the game, there are two issues with the game. There's only one out of all those cards. There's only one woman, which I think is really like reprehensible. The Carnies brings in more women, I think, but I haven't looked through the cards. But there's only one woman, which is crazy.
But these are all murderers and murdered people.
Yeah, but give me some femme fatales. Give me like
Paul, what do you think about this game? You played this game several times. I'm still always shocked how few people know about this game. But what do you think, Paul?
I mean, I think you have it the nail on the head. Is like I think the theme hurt it. I don't think as a whole people enjoy what you call it, sympathizing with serial killers.
Yeah,
it's just not something that people will instantly gravitate to.
Not my brother-in-law.
Say again?
Not my brother-in-law. He doesn't.
Not your brother-in-law. That's right. That's right.
He doesn't have that problem.
I've exceeded the concepts of good and evil, but.
I'm a walking
God. But in the end, like, it is this. What I really like about it is it feels remarkably pragmatic if you get into the theme. Like,
yes.
Here's the thing. I got to do this. Oh, I killed this person. I got to bury him. Oh, here comes the cop. I got X, Y, and Z. It feels so organic to, like a situation, much like Ben said, like, small crime escalates and blah, 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 blah. And it's just like and I don't want to use this word because it might make me sound crazy. There's a certain pleasantness about that. Like, there's, you just divorce yourself from morality, and then you just go like, oh, here is what needs to be done. And it's I don't want to say it's refreshing because that definitely makes me sound crazy, but it's definitely freeing. How about that? Is that a better word? No.
I think
this has been
there are far worse atrocities in the world of board gaming that have been depicted in the world of board gaming than this horrific French family.
This has been Sociopaths on Games. Please join us next week when we.
That's right.
Oh my God!
But here's the thing about and to your point, Tom, the theme, like let's say you do a colonization game or whatever, like imperialism.
Yeah.
Like it's all kind of like hidden, like like hidden might not be the right word, but like
no, it is.
That's not the
whitewashed.
Sure.
Let's say whitewashed.
Sure,
it is.
Well, whitewashed. Whereas this, like you're in it. You're going to kill this person. You're going to bury them. You're going to create mechanisms to bury people better. Like, it's really in your face. And I don't know if people like being confronted like that.
Maybe not.
But if you can...
I like it.
Yeah, I do too. Because we're sociopaths. But like, in the end, like, I think if you can just look... I don't want to say past that, but just embrace that. You go like, oh, there's such... Like for me, it's like back to wavelength. Like, it's really about... Life is about empathy, understanding people's worldviews from where they are, and like you could see in this game where like if you were a killer and you had to do these things, this is how you would do it. Yeah. Does that make sense?
I think the barrier for entry to this game is actually less the theme and more that it's like a little heavier than you'd expect for this game, and
the artwork,
and it may not be like as heavy as other people might want it. And I think I've found that when I've taught the game, sometimes people's eyes glaze over when you're just describing the different things the cards can do. So there's that. I think the artwork is fantastic. I think the theme is deliciously macabre. I feel like it's very immersive. I feel like you feel like you're running an inn. It feels like an actual movie. I think it's a wonderful game, and I have not played it in forever, and I need to.
Yeah, I think
that's a great way of saying it. It feels cinematic.
Yeah, and there's more game there than you would think. You look at the Bloody Inn and you think, oh, this is going to be a 30-minute silly filler, but no, it's a game. It's a real game, and it's got a lot to it. It's surprisingly good. All right, we're definitely not doing a game sommelier. Why don't you jump through your list of other things you need to say? Hot takes. Here we go.
Hot takes of games. These are games that are they hidden gems / they deserve a second thought. Wings for the Baron, if you find it, it's from Victory Point Games, which I think they're out of business, so you may not find this one. It looks like a super dry, ridiculous game. It's actually like a romp. It's a lovely, fun game about World War I and building biplanes for the Germans. A delight, but it actually is a delight. Kraftwagen, car making, surprisingly really fun. I really love it. I felt like this was under the radar. Tragedy Looper is unlike anything else, and
yes, it is. I love it. I love that game. I own it. Pivot. I own it, and I love it. Yeah,
yeah. Tragedy Looper. I may come back and want to do a review of Tragedy Looper actually, because I think it's unlike any other game, and I think it's absolutely fantastic.
I'm your Huckleberry.
Zhang is like What's Your Games has like certain like Madeira and these certain superstars, and Zhang Guo is an excellent game that I feel like sort of gets like a little bit lost in that mix. So if you see a copy of that, definitely get it. Gentes came out about a year or two ago, and it got like some people liked it a lot. Some people gave it sort of mediocre reviews. I think it's great. I think it's a wonderful game that's worth exploring. Kalimala came out. That feels like an old classic, but it's only about 2 years old. Super, super fun. Stronghold, I think, released it. Definitely check it out. Here's one that you guys are going to give me a lot of grief about, but I'm saying it. I'm putting it out there. Key to the City, London. I am of
Key to the City, London. Okay, there you go. I owe you $20, Paul. Thank you. This has been Game Brain. Join us next week when we hear Ben talk more about Key to the City, London. Go ahead.
I like it more than regular Keyflower. To me, it sort of strips out some of the stuff that I find a little annoying about Keyflower. But and on top of that, I love the theming in modern day London. I love seeing a modern London game. Along that same lines, a game that seems to always come up for me because I feel like it applies so well in so many different scenarios is On the Underground, which is about building the tube in London. Great game. People really need to know about it. Pandemic. Rising Tide, which is actually the Splotter Pandemic because one of the Splotter guys designed it, is my favorite of the pandemics. If you see it, it's very different and it is fantastic. Wildcatters is a really cool, funky oil game where it's this big, beautiful map. And
the first Capstone game, wasn't it?
I don't know if it was the first, but it's definitely one of the crazy ones. And it's like, it's hard to describe, but you're just basically building this crazy oil infrastructure around the world. It's really cool. Lignum, another Capstone, super ugly. Probably one of the ugly. It's uglier than City Hall.
Talk about font crimes. The font crimes in that game are obscene. And I just 2 weeks ago, I was ranting about how great that game is when we talked about Francis Drake because it has a similar mechanic.
Great game. I feel like it does not get the love it deserves because it looks like it was made by crayons with someone who doesn't know how to use crayons. But it is a super fun, super dry, super fun game. And the last one, I'm not sure if this is a hidden gem or not, but I kind of feel like it's on the cusp. So I'm just going to say it. Panamax, great game.
Panamax. All right, I'm going to go through mine much quicker than Ben did, I hope. My first three are all Reiner Kenitzia. Remember I said I had all these Reiner Kenitsias? Through the Desert, Reiner Kenitzia, 1998. It is multiplayer Go. Crazy good. Samurai, maybe his best medium weight game. It's only plays about an hour. Gorgeous, gorgeous board. Tremendously difficult choices. Colossal Arena is an incredible battle royale game played with cards. Really tough, really thinky, amazing. Wallenstein is one of the best. This is a game that I play with people that like Ameritrash games, and I want to bring them over into Euro games. Amazing, very different than almost anything else you'll ever play. Sleuth. Back in 1971, Sid Sackson's Sleuth is still the cleanest, the clearest, the perfect deduction game. It's a little dry, but it's amazing. Genoa is the best negotiation game that ever has been. Still amazing to this day. Not really a hidden gem, but it's kind of disappeared. We don't really hear it. Greed Incorporated, maybe Paul's favorite splotter, but definitely the forgotten splotter. Liberté is a 6-player Martin Wallace area control game set during the French Revolution, and it is as bloody and brutal and bruising as Martin Wallace and French Revolution would have you think. Polarity is this bizarre little dexterity game using magnets that is for a completist, it is one of the most amazing things ever. Barely a game, but fascinating. Cartagena, I've mentioned many times, is one of the best fillers that I've ever played. Play it with the family all the time. Kind of thinky, really interesting. And last but not least, we'll end with a Reiner Kenitzia as well. Winner's Circle is my favorite horse racing game. Strategic, fun, plays with all ages. Get 'em. There you go.
There we go.
Cool.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.